Welcome to the special edition of CPAC Now. We're going to be covering the January 6th hearings and really providing you the facts of what we're watching on TV and making sure that you all are getting the best information we can as we dissect this absurd political circus that's being run by the January 6th committee, led by, of course, the Democrats and a couple of so-called Republicans. Schlapp, your initial reaction of what you think we're going to see tonight.
Well, let me first say that we have a website that's gone live, 16facts.org. It's a place where you can go to get the real information about what the Democrats are basically propagandizing about with the committee. So we'll be putting information up throughout the committee hearings. We've been putting it up throughout the day.
Right.
Look, what I expect is that Congress always leaks. Whenever they got something, they leak it. Mm-hmm. If before 8 o'clock tonight nothing's been leaked, then I think this is just repackaging of what we've already read and seen. Compelling new videos, maybe even altered to even look better, right? Like the whole TV piece of this.
Right. Well, who did they hire? They hired this
producer.
ABC big time, producer, James Goldston. And, they really want to make it into this choreographed, very highly produced, made for prime time television. And I think really the Democrats and the media, they're colluding so much together to try to make this into the biggest deal for the American people, while we're putting gas in our cars and it's costing us $130, or it's almost $5 a gallon nationally. I know here in Virginia it's close to $6 a gallon. I mean, it is just devastating to watch what the American people are going through, and yet the Democrats, they're focused on the January 6th.
So the key here is that the hard left in this country has gotten away with so many lies. They got away with the Russian collusion for years. Then they immediately started on impeachment. They tried to say that Donald Trump tried to collude with the president of Ukraine. By the way, they really like that guy now. And you go through all of this, and you had the election. Then you had all the stuff about the virus and how Trump somehow spread the virus. And then, of course, we had all the violence of Black Lives Matter. Now, the most tragic part of what we're seeing in our country is two systems of justice. If you are a Trump supporter, if you are a Republican, if you're a conservative in our major cities, especially Washington, D.C., do not expect justice. The people associated with the protests and the mob around 1/6, many of whom have been in solitary confinement. They've been in prison since it's occurred. Some of them are not charged. Look at just today in the state of Michigan. They charged one of the Republican gubernatorial candidates with misdemeanors, but yet they waited till today, the day the show trials start, to arrest this man. How come they couldn't arrest him any other day in the last 18 months? It just shows you that this is a charade, but think about it. If you're where we live in the Washington, D.C. area, and if they decide to come after you with lawfare, with the DOJ or something, you've got no shot for justice in our nation's capital. And that's how we should be looking at these whole proceedings as we watch them tonight.
Right. It was The View co-host Jo Behar. She said the January 6th committee primetime hearing should be done in, quote, the most dramatic way so that the viewers will want to watch. I mean, Matthew, this is what we're dealing with. It is about the drama behind it. It is about putting up all these videos up there. And I just really think that it's the Democrats' efforts to change the subject. They're desperate. They know their poll numbers are horrible. They're trying to figure out a way where they could talk about anything else except the inflation, spiking crime, high gas prices, high food prices, and really the struggles of the American family.
So, if you look at all the riots of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, billions of dollars in damage, dead cops, buildings burned down, people injured. Remember, the President of the United States had to be removed for the first time since September 11th, really, when they did that with the Vice President. Donald Trump had to be removed into the bunker because of all the violent protesters surrounding the White House during that summer. I was actually in that mob that night, and that's okay, because that was a grievance over race. And we've allowed all of this illegal activity to occur as long as you're from the left and as long as you're expressing the proper racial politics. If you have a grievance on the right, if you want your vote to count, if you want your elected officials to support election laws, you better not protest too aggressively because you're going to wind up in jail. And these two systems of justice is really what the big problem is, and it goes into the committee itself, sweetheart, because this is why Nancy Pelosi didn't want any real Republicans on the committee,
Right.
because they would have exposed it in its very first
Well,
meeting.
Nancy Pelosi is very proud of Liz Cheney for being part of this committee. And as we know, Matt, one thing we uncovered, and you uncovered as well, is that Liz Cheney actually solicited campaign funds from someone she subpoenaed. And that was an article that came out on the Federalist and several other media outlets.
And CPAC uncovered the information.
Yes.
By the way, there are other people she solicited money from as well. And I think there needs to be ethical questions asked about using your power on being on a committee like this,
Right.
where you have subpoena power, and to use it in a corrupt fashion is a real question that should be answered.
Now, you tweeted out the 1-6 charade is more like the DNC convention than a congressional hearing, replete with TV producers and full-on CNN drama. How much is it costing us all?
Yeah, this is right, which is, when you hire TV producers and everything else, I'm told we're already over $5 million on this committee. There are no questions asked about security. There are no questions asked of Nancy Pelosi. Why was Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch was able to uncover that the Capitol Hill police was at 50% force
Right.
on the day of 1/6. On a day when everybody was a little bit worried about what might happen, the Capitol police force was down 50%. How come Nancy Pelosi didn't fix that?
Shouldn't
She's
she be
ultimately
subpoenaed?
responsible.
I think Nancy Pelosi should be subpoenaed.
Well, that's what we're going to have to do when
Yeah.
we get power back. And the
It's-
American
yeah.
people are going to give the Republicans power back. And when they get that power, they really ought to use it to figure out what the real security breaches were.
Right.
How come those doors were open? How come so many people were able to get inside? It's outrageous what happened that day.
Yeah, I did tweet out reminder that the January 6th committee is being led by Representative Benny Thompson, who voted to overturn the 2004 election, Representative Jamie Raskin, who voted to overturn the 2016 election, and Representative Adam Schiff, who claimed for years that he had proof of the Russian collusion. I mean, these guys are frauds.
These guys are fraudsters, and look, I think the great thing about this show trial is people can watch it and they can see it for what it is. And I think the New York Times told on the Democratic Party, which is kind of fun.
Right.
The New York Times 2 days ago actually said the reason why they had all these Democrats on background saying, and off the record saying, that they're doing this to try to distract us from understanding that there's $5 and $6 gas, to
Right.
distract us from the fact that Putin is on the rise. Obviously, Putin feels like he's now empowered because he's become a fossil fuel king. Because every time Joe Biden cancels a fossil fuel project here in America, the price goes up and Putin gets richer and he can be more aggressive. And of course, no baby formula, food prices going through the roof. But don't worry, Joe Biden went on Jimmy Kimmel to make us all feel better.
Oh, I don't know if he's making us all feel better, but he's definitely, at least he was kind of awake in the interview. I think that's kind of promising.
Yeah.
He didn't have to use a teleprompter. But, I think another thing that we're also tracking that the New York Times decided that they were going to, put it on like page 20, like it was not even on the front page of the New York Times, was this man who was looking to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. This, I think, was shocking news for so many of us. And you have to wonder, the same way that Pelosi did not have the right police force in place on 1/6, and now you see these House Democrats who are not even giving additional protection for our Supreme Court justices. This is a scary time, Matt.
Well, and of course, Justice Kavanaugh's family, they're in all of our prayers. And by the way, it's illegal to have these protests very near a Supreme Court justice's home. Think about when you have young kids, too. It's illegal to try to have those protests in an intent to intimidate them around one of their decisions, which is the stated purpose of these protests.
Right.
So we're going to release a letter from CPAC today to Governor Hogan and to Governor Youngkin saying, come on, guys, you're both Republicans. Enforce the law. Make sure that these protesters are not physically close. Certainly armed protesters. How outrageous is that? Can you imagine if this was happening to Ruth Bader Ginsburg or to Sonia Sotomayor, do you think that Merrick Garland and Joe Biden would protect them? I sure think that they would protect them. And
Right.
the law is very clear. So, hey, it's time for these governors and it's time for Joe Biden to enforce these laws and keep these justices, no matter who appointed them, Democrat or Republican, safe and free from intimidation in an increasingly tough time to be a judge.
Yeah, and what's really sad is that the Democrats have spent a lot of time, I think, festering this, what I would say these call to arms or these protests. So you've got Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago, saying to my friends in the LGBTQ community, this was back in May, the Supreme Court is coming for us next. This moment has to be a call for arms. You saw Chuck Schumer also telling Brett Kavanaugh he'll pay the price for Roe. For his decision on Roe, and he was completely okay with protests happening outside of the justices' homes. So did Jen Psaki, obviously encouraging these protests outside of the judges' homes. This is just something that needs to stop.
But think about it, yet they blame Donald Trump for his rhetoric causing the mob around the Capitol.
Yep.
But they don't look at their own rhetoric around what could have been a terrible tragedy for a Supreme Court justice. We got to treat everything the same. And the fact is this, we got to protect these justices. Every politician ought to encourage the American people to follow the law. We ought to encourage the DOJ to follow the law. And if the Department of Justice and the FBI continue to have a one-way justice system where it only goes after Trump supporters and Republicans, and the only time candidates get arrested is when they're Republican, although there was one nice little bit of news that a former Pennsylvania congressman was arrested for stuffing ballots into ballot boxes, which we are told is not a thing.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You had a great tweet on this, Matt. This is all being done to sway the votes on Roe v. Wade, which is a crime. Why is the AG silent, and why is he not stopping this? Especially troubling when kids are involved. It's clear socialist Democrats like this intimidation and attempt to influence justice.
Yeah, look, violence is a part of this new socialist Democratic Party. They have used violence to intimidate people. They used violence around that whole summer of Black Lives Matter and Antifa to try to silence us who would oppose this radical regime. Remember, their agenda was no families, no churches, no prophet, no state of Israel, abortion on demand for 9 months.
That's right.
Whatever they called about a queer America, all of these things, that was what their agenda was, and they want you to feel intimidated if you want to counter that agenda. The good news is the American people don't look like they're getting very intimidated. Matter of fact, it looks like they're getting fired up. And I think it's going to be, I think the Democratic Party, if America is to continue strong, really needs to be repudiated by the voters. They just need to lose almost everything. And I'd like them to go back to being the old-time Democratic Party. Yes, it was liberal. Yes, it wanted to spend too much money. Yes, it believed in a lot less Constitution. But there were things we could still agree on together, like you do need cops, and you need a strong military, and parents aren't domestic terrorists, and schools should teach you how to read and write, and not teach you to hate your parents, hate your country, and hate your gender.
And
hate your gender.
That's right.
So that's what needs to happen. We're going to be coming at you throughout this whole process.
Yep.
We have this new website, as I said, 16facts.org, which is a function of, as you know, we started the First Amendment Fund at the very beginning of this committee to help all of those victims who have been subpoenaed. Do you know, sweetheart, we've already raised over $1 million and spent over $1 million to help these people who are being persecuted by the committee. And now the next phase are these show trials, and you can count on CPAC to be out there aggressively pushing back on all this propaganda, all these falsehoods that are going to be put in perfectly lit circumstances, wonderful videos to try to push their narrative. The only problem with it, it's completely a lie.
So Hollywood reaches Capitol Hill, and that's what we're going to be watching tonight. And we'll be making sure that I would definitely be watching Matt Schlapp's Twitter because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of activity as we're watching these hearings together. So if you guys don't want to watch, don't worry. We've got y'all covered here at CPAC. And remember, on a much happier, lighter note, we've got CPAC Texas happening August 4th through the 7th. We are starting to announce our speakers. I can tell you, I could have really, you know when you walk into the office, you know CPAC is coming soon.
That's right.
Because the energy level, it all starts coming together because our staff is just focused and ready and excited. So we hope you all can join us there. Remember, it's a big and important year for the midterm elections, which I think Republicans and conservatives will win big. And, you know, right at CPAC is when we kick off all activities associated with midterm elections and making sure that you all get activated in your communities to make change and make sure that we bring in more conservatives into political office.
I think we're going to have a big year because America is awake, not woke, which is our CPAC theme.
Well, we've been traveling so much that I need to sleep and not be awake for a little bit.
We need to do a little less awakening. Yeah, no, that's right. We really have been hitting the campaign trail. I'm next off to Nevada to stand with Adam Laxalt, who will be the next U.S. Senator from Nevada, I predict. And as I said, we'll be coming at you often with updates on what's going on in 1-6. Go to the website, follow us on Twitter, and thanks so much for being with us on CPAC Now on this special edition of the 1-6 Committee.